Today, we're diving into a story that, honestly, sounds like something out of a dystopian novel. It's about science, it's about absolute power, and it's about the catastrophic collision between the two. I mean, just think about that for a second. How on earth does one man's weird ideas about plants lead to mass famine and literally the death of science in a country? It sounds impossible. To get our heads around this, we've got to rewind the clock to the early days of the Soviet Union, a time of incredible desperation. So let's set the scene. We're talking the early 1930s, and the brand new Soviet state is, well, it's teetering on the edge. Look, the Communist Party's big idea, this forced collectivization, it was an absolute disaster. They basically just ripped farms away from the peasants, and surprise, surprise, food production completely collapses. This leads to horrific famines, people are resisting, the whole country is basically a powder keg. And the guys in charge? They are desperate for a miracle, any quick fix to the crisis they created. And right into this absolute mess steps our guy, the man who promised that miracle. Meet Trofim Lysenko. Now, in a lot of ways, he was the perfect man for this moment. He wasn't some stuffy intellectual from the old guard. Nope, he came from a peasant family, was pretty much self-taught, didn't even learn to read till he was 13. To the party, he was the real deal, a barefoot scientist, one of the people. And Lysenko wasn't just some theorist scribbling in a notebook. He had charisma. He knew how to talk to farmers who were fed up. But, and this is the key part, he made these huge, bold promises straight to the top guy, to Stalin himself. He promised revolutionary techniques that would feed the entire nation. And Stalin? He bought it, hook, line, and sinker. So what were these amazing revolutionary ideas? Well, folks, this is where our story takes a very sharp turn away from anything resembling actual science and straight into the land of ideology. Okay, this is the heart of the whole thing. Lysenko basically threw out everything we knew about genetics. All that foundational work by Gregor Mendel, the stuff that explains how traits get passed down through genes, yeah, he just tossed it. Instead, he brought back this old, totally discredited idea that whatever happens to an organism during its life can get passed on to its kids. I mean, the difference here is just night and day. Mainstream science, then and now, knows that heredity is all about genes, right? DNA. Lysenko, on the other hand, claimed it was passed through the whole body. And get this, he even argued that plants of the same class wouldn't compete with each other. They'd cooperate. I mean, how convenient is that for a communist ideology? He'd point to stuff like grafting a branch onto a tree and claim that that could permanently change the tree's genetics. He also believed in this, well, it was basically this idea that experiences from the whole body get funneled into the seed. Now, to any real scientist, this was just complete nonsense. But to a political regime that wants to radically transform society overnight, the idea that you can just re-engineer nature super fast, man, that was music to their ears. But here's the dark turn. Lysenko wasn't interested in a healthy scientific debate. Nope, he wanted to crush all opposition. And with Stalin's full support, Lysenko went on the attack. It was ruthless. He started calling real geneticists enemies of the people, saboteurs. And just look at this timeline. It shows you how terrifyingly fast he took over. By 1940, he's the director of the Institute of Genetics. Game over. This right here, this is the official report from a conference in 1948. And at this meeting, Lysenko's ideas were declared the one and only truth. Mendelian genetics was officially banned. Outlawed. They called it a bourgeois pseudoscience. And you have to understand, this wasn't a scientific disagreement anymore. This was a political purge. If you were a scientist in the Soviet Union, you had a choice. You could publicly denounce your entire life's work and say Lysenko was right, or you could face the consequences. And those consequences were dire. People were fired, sent to the gulags, some were even executed. And the most tragic story, the most famous victim, was a man named Nikolai Vavilov. This guy was a world-famous botanist. He'd even supported Lysenko early on, but the moment he started to criticize the pseudoscience, he was arrested as a spy. And the irony is just sickening. A man who dedicated his life to ending famine died of starvation in a prison. So this war on science, it wasn't just some abstract academic tragedy. It had real, deadly consequences for millions and millions of people. Lysenko's crazy theories were put into practice all across the Soviet Union. Farmers were told to plant seeds packed super close together, based on his law that they'd cooperate instead of compete. They were forced to use his vernalization technique, freezing seeds to try and make them grow faster, which was totally unreliable and usually just ruined the entire crop. All of these methods were a spectacular failure. They led to catastrophically low yields and made the famines they were supposed to fix even worse. And the tragedy didn't even stop at the Soviet border. Lysenko's ideas were like a poison, exported to other communist countries. In China, his methods were a major part of the Great Leap Forward, and they became a contributing factor to the Great Chinese Famine, which was one of the deadliest in all of human history. So, how did this nightmare finally come to an end, and what kind of scars did it leave behind? Well, the big change came when Stalin died in 1953. Suddenly, Lysenko lost his ultimate protector, and slowly, very carefully, real scientists started to find their voices again, challenging his nonsense. His iron grip on power finally started to crumble. The final public nail in the coffin came in 1964. At a big meeting of the Academy of Sciences, the famous physicist and later human rights activist, Andrei Sakharov, he just stood up and let him have it. This quote says it all. He laid the blame for the complete destruction of Soviet biology right at Lysenko's feet. Lysenko was stripped of all his power. He died in 1976, basically a disgraced and forgotten old man. The guy who once held the power of life and death over an entire field of science ended up right here, in this simple, unremarkable grave. But the damage he did was staggering. Before Lysenko came along, the Soviet Union had, you could argue, one of the best genetics communities in the entire world. He didn't just set it back, he completely gutted it. Some estimates say he set Russian biology back by half a century. And that's what leaves us with this final, chilling question. The story of Trofim Lysenko is, an extreme case, but it's also a timeless warning. It's a terrifying reminder of what happens when ideology gets to shout down evidence. The human cost isn't just a number in a textbook. It's measured in destroyed lives, in starved families, and in lost generations.